Bom dia!
We are finally reviewing Kleber Mendoza Filho's political drama, The Secret Agent.
Finally.
Also, that's the Oscar submission for Brazil, right?
Yes, that's correct. And we've been dying to see this film. For those who remember last year, Amelia Perez was the expected winner early on in that international category, but I'm Still Here caught many people by surprise, ended up winning.
I'm still here, Brazil.
So Brazil is definitely having a moment right now within cinema. And Secret Agent is kind of a companion piece to I'm Still Here, would you say?
I think so.
It's tonally different, but both films take place in the 1970s during the Brazilian dictatorship, both about memories and corruption and trauma. Why don't you tell people what Secret Agent is for those who aren't familiar?
Sure. The Secret Agent follows Marcelo, also known as Armando, a man who's on the run from a repressive dictatorship in Brazil. Arriving in Recife during Carnaval looking to reunite with his son, he lays low at the city's social registration archive, but gets entangled in a network of assassins and corrupt authorities.
Yes, The Secret Agent is described as being a political thriller, but it definitely operates on its own unique wavelength in comparison to I'm Still Here, which was this nuanced, emotional drama based on true story. Secret Agent is a much stranger tale that is equally a mystery as it is a satire, and Filho doesn't tell you everything you want to know like right off the bat. He doesn't do that. He slowly gives you one piece at a time until that picture becomes clear, leading to a very tense and impactful conclusion, at least for me.
Personally, I'm drawn to those types of films that withhold information.
You do like those types of movies.
Like the coded conversations only make me lean in more and like pay attention more because I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Like, what is this guy running from and what happened to his wife? And who are those shady people that are like after him, the police officers?
Whose leg is in that shark?
Yes, whose leg is in that shark? In this film in particular, while you do have all these questions floating around, you still find yourself atmospherically drawn to the film's environment. I also felt like there was so much to mull over and like to chew on once the film ended. I feel like we had like lots of conversations about what things mean, what were our takeaways.
Right.
What was your takeaway, by the way?
Well, you know, I have really limited knowledge about Brazilian history, like surrounding the dictatorship in the 70s. I'm likely to learn more from people in the comments section, as born Brazilians are likely to pick up on things that I probably missed. But my overall takeaway was that it was about collective trauma. It was about how an oppressive regime who destroyed families, how that affects a community, and how that trauma carries on to its descendants, and how important chapters of history are often pushed aside because it's easier to forget than face the pain of remembering. That was my main takeaway.
Yeah, I agree. I think generational trauma and the importance of preservation of memories is also a key theme in I'm Still Here, which is why I think it makes like a good, like you said, companion piece. But in I'm Still Here, all the ugliness I feel like happens behind closed doors. And in this film, it's like very much out in the open. It's pretty gruesome sometimes. There's like some body horror stuff and like some creepy things that happen, making this film, I think, a lot grittier. Filho does not shy away from showing us like the blatant, vast corruption during this time period.
Yeah, which is really clear. Like in the first opening scene, shows Armando coming across that dead body that's just been kind of covered in cardboard. And it's explained that the police were called wasn't it like days ago? Mm-hmm. And when they do arrive, it's not even for the body. It's simply to shake down Armando. With Secret Agent only being my second Filho experience, I found his direction really alluring, often hypnotic, and really was just this really detailed snapshot of a specific time, a specific place.
Yeah, I agree. But instead of Rio de Janeiro, Filho gives us a portrait of Recife. The vibrant city of Recife is shown in contrast to the political violence of that time. And ironically, these dark moments with so much death occur during Carnaval. And that's, I think, just a stark contrast showing the resilience of the Brazilian people.
Yeah, the only other film that we've seen of Filho thus far was Bacaro. Remember that? And it was another film that was also difficult to kind of put in a specific genre. Being a film that takes place in the 70s, The Secret Agent is more of a hybrid that taps into the paranoid and political thrillers that were so popular at the time, and films that also featured large conspiracies, fears of being spied on and that slow build of tension. And the events of Secret Agent also took place while people were experiencing Jaws fever.
Yeah, that's true. In this film, Armando's son is obsessed with Jaws. And you can gather that perhaps Filio is making a metaphorical comparison between a shark and the fear of like a sinister authoritarian regime that can suddenly strike at any moment, just like the shark can in the movie.
Yeah, there's quite a few references to different films throughout this film. Another one is The Omen, and Filio references these classic films for more than just kind of like nerding out on film. They kind of play a pivotal role within the plot, often mirroring and reflecting Brazil's own fears during this specific time period.
Yeah, I think a lot of these film references also demonstrate how Filio is a true cinephile. I think he has a true love for film.
Yeah, I haven't seen his documentary, but he has a documentary from a few years ago called Pictures of Ghosts, where Filio explores his memories of Recife and the old cinemas that were once there. Definitely want to check that one out.
Yeah, there's a lot in this film that feels very personal to Filio's own experience growing up in Recife. There's this ongoing side plot that involves a hairy leg that was found in the belly of the shark. The leg gets moved around quite a bit, but in one of the more satirical scenes, there's like a group of friends that are reading the tabloid news, they show this leg is like reanimated, like an old school zombie film, and it attacks people, which felt like the press's way to call out the government's violence by coding it as a hairy leg.
That's probably one of the more like surreal moments within this film, right?
Like it was so different from the rest of the film that I thought like this has to mean something.
Right.
I thought it was just really interesting. And also it sounded like it was possibly rooted in real history perhaps, because it's just so niche and unique. And I did read actually later that the hairy leg is based on a real urban legend in Recife, and journalists were heavily censored at that time. So they would use things like the hairy leg as code for the Brazilian military in order to report on their assault on marginalized communities. Overall, I think the film is quite subtle. And it's quite intricate in the themes that it explores. So if you're going into this film thinking like you're going into like, an action film or like a thriller that's just like pure thriller, pure action, you're going to miss a lot of these important nuances that I think are vital to the film's experience.
Yeah. I don't want to say like the plot itself is not like convoluted. It's just very intricate. I feel like if there wasn't like enough to take in, like from the production design and the striking cinematography, I may feel a desire for like a little speedier pace, but there's just so much detail to soak in that it kind of works for me. And I think one of my favorite scenes that uses slower pace beautifully was a scene between Maria Fernanda Candido and Wagner Moura. I think that's where we learn a little bit more about Armando's past, but that scene was...
That was one of my favorite scenes too. It's such a realistic ambient scene. You can almost feel the warm air coming through the window. Every time they open the door, like to the room that they were in, you could hear the sounds from the movie being projected downstairs. It just felt like I was in the room with them.
Yeah. And we should probably talk about Wagner Moura's performance, which... This film feels timed to his very calming and assured presence. Obviously, his character is currently hiding and trying to evade being captured, so the last thing Armando wants to do is stand out, but Moura conveys that anger and fear under the surface. There's like times throughout this film where he has like a smile, he has to shake a hand, but there's like a little twinkle in his eyes of just utter contempt. I think it's a very subtle performance, but I think very well done, very effective, very realistic.
Yeah, I agree. He's also just so likable. There's no scene where like he flies off the handles or he's like super showy, but he does have a very magnetic presence that grounds the film. He also just has such a cool aura that surrounds him. Yeah. It's just fitting for this like spy adjacent thriller.
He's kind of like a Brazilian Brad Pitt. In some ways. But also thinking about the film's title, The Secret Agent, you may be under the assumption that Wagner Moura plays a secret agent within this film, but he's just an ordinary professor trying to survive. So it's a little bit of a misdirect because I think Moura, like many citizens of Brazil at the time, I'm sure had to take on the qualities of a secret agent. Like he needs to be discreet. He needs to maintain composure under pressure.
He has to conceal his real identity because he has an alias.
That's right, exactly. And that leads to our last 40 minutes of the film, and the film does shift into a gear that is a little bit more traditional spy thriller. It's very taut, very suspenseful. It's well shot and soaks in every moment. And what really makes it more tense is Filio has methodically told this sprawling story where we are just like heavily invested in Armando's safety that you're just like so hooked into the story at that point.
Yeah, there's so much I want to talk about because the film's ending was really powerful. I feel like it can be interpreted in different ways.
Yeah. I didn't think so, and so until we talked about it. But yeah, I think it could. Well, let's talk about it. Let's rate it first, and then we'll move on to bonus spoiler section.
Yeah. Okay. I really found myself caught up and enjoying, this elaborate web of a story. As a non-Brazilian, similar to watching I'm Still Here, I was really engulfed by the story that was very specific to a time and place. It's a lengthy tale, but it left a lasting impression on me. So I think I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10.
Okay, well, I completely agree. Bacaro was my only Filio experience prior, which was this kind of scathing, brazenly kind of empowering film. I really liked that film, but I think I liked Secret Agent even more. It's incredibly detailed, and we didn't even mention the music throughout, which was fantastic. So I'm going to go and give this film an 8 as well.
So I guess let's move on to spoilers.
Yes, let's move on to spoilers.
If you haven't seen this film, now would be the time to stop watching this review, and you can come back after you see the film so we can talk about the ending specifically, because I think that it's something people might want to talk about.
All right, so let's talk about, so the last scene of the film is we see a young researcher who's been listening to the tapes from Elsa's resistance network. Ultimately, the entire film is nearly being recalled by this researcher who's listening to these audio recordings. And then the final scene is in present day. It's with her. She's visiting Armando's son, Fernando, who is a doctor at a blood bank, right? Or is it a hospital? Mm-hmm. Blood bank or hospital.
Yeah, this is following her discovery of a newspaper clipping showing that Armando has been assassinated.
Yeah, and the movie kind of just drops it in your lap.
Yeah.
Pretty suddenly.
This is pretty devastating because we have been following and rooting for Armando. At one point, it appears like he might actually make it out of Recife with his son, but it doesn't actually happen. And Filio doesn't show the events that lead up to his death. Yeah. We learn about his death in this little black and white article. And there's a photo showing him lying on the street.
Really heartbreaking.
I found
really
it
unsettling.
Really, really chilling.
Yeah.
Really disturbing. Jaws is a film that is referenced throughout this film. Jaws is famously known for being terrifying, not only for what you do see, but for what you don't see. And just giving us a simple photo is causing us to fill in the blanks ourselves. And I think that's almost worse, which also parallels Fernando's fear of the Jaws poster growing up.
And there's also a motif surrounding death, I think, in newspapers throughout this film. I think when the hitman is killed, his face is covered with a newspaper, turning what was once a life into a headline or a death count. And I also found it interesting that as an audience, it feels like Filio is intentionally depriving us as an audience of having any closure. Like during this dark period in the 70s, many Brazilians disappeared or were killed without explanation. And maybe I'm stretching, but it feels like it was a very deliberate choice to just deprive us as an audience in knowing what exactly happened, because so many Brazilians were also robbed of having that closure themselves.
Yeah, and I believe he actually never got closure with finding his mother's document.
No.
Because there's also like no closure with what happened to his mom. And she feels like she was somebody who was possibly disappeared, and he was ongoing looking for this document.
Right.
In the final scene at the hospital, Armando's son, Fernando, is asked questions about what he remembers about his father. He almost like refuses to have any memories of him. Although by the end, I still think that we're left with some ambiguity and lack of closure. Do you agree?
Well, I know he was always very uncomfortable whenever the subject of his father came up, right?
Yeah, there's like a resistance to not want to think about the past because I think it's too painful. Personally, I think that there's this very specific look that Fernando gives at the very, very last shot of the film that indicates to me that he does remember his father. But because the trauma is so deeply rooted, forgetting becomes almost like a coping mechanism for him.
Well, I found it really interesting too that the last scene has two characters that represent two choices. A character that chooses to forget and a preservationist who is actively seeking to preserve memory. I think that's kind of an interesting intentional choice he made.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's a scene that feels so layered because Fernando also talks about the movie theater that was torn down, which was once like the sacred place where stories are told. Now it's the same hospital that he works in. Filio also shows concern to, I guess, preserve this art form of telling stories in order to preserve history as well.
Yeah, it's true. It's a movie about preserving memory, but also sees films as an extension of preserving memory through storytelling. That's pretty cool. Do you have anything else you want to share, or is that's pretty much?
No, that was like the ending was so it was so great. It was so layered and so interesting. We talked about it for a long time, and you even like rewatched it.
Yeah, I rewatched it.
It's just really interesting. Great, really well done.
Well, that's a review of The Secret Agent. I'm sure there's much more that we didn't pick up on, but...
Yeah, please leave your comments below on your thoughts on the film and let us know.
Yeah, other than that, Oscar talk. So I'm going to be quick on this. I think the film is going to get a Best Picture nomination. I think it's in. I think Wagner Moura is winning the Golden Globe. I think he's going to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor. And I think this film could even build enough momentum to win Best International Feature Film. I think that's possible. You know, there's so many strong contenders in the international category. I think there's room for it to go in many different directions. And winning a Globe for Best Actor, and of course being nominated for a major acting category, I think that raises the film's visibility. I also think there's a chance that Kleber Mendoza Filho can surprise with the director nomination. And I think original screenplay category is also something that we need to consider as well. You know, the film is picking up steam, I think, earlier than I'm Still Here did. So there's more surprise nominations, I think, that are possible. But that's what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, but what do you think? What do you guys think? Let us know. Ryan has some more videos coming your way. I believe he's got a new experiment coming. Is that true?
It's not as spooky as you make it seem, but yeah. Yeah, so feel free to hit the subscribe button down below to watch more Oscar-related videos. Thanks always for watching, and until next time, everyone.
Nos vemos.
No Oscar.